Very much indeed. Lots more to hear from you as we travel around the patch in the next few weeks. But joining us in the studio this morning are the Labour MP for Canterbury, Rosie Duffield, Hannah Perkin, the Lib Dem candidate for Faversham and Mid-Kent, Maria Caulfield is the Conservative MP for Lewis, and Tim Vince is the Brexit Party candidate for South Thanet. Welcome to all of you, and we'll try and hear as much as we can from you on our subjects of the day. Tim, our audience may not recognise you, but some people will. You have been a regular TV presenter on the evangelical Christian channel Revelation TV. Now, look, doing my homework, I've gone back and looked at the things you've said, particularly about the EU as a Brexit Party candidate.
You don't have to look too far.
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't. There's lots of videos and lots of articles. Pretty much everything you've expressed until recently about the EU is expressed in spiritual terms, along with your views on other political issues like sex education and equal marriage. Since you became a candidate in the middle of August, that appears to have changed. Why?
Not at all. You haven't been doing that much research. You've just looked at the front of the internet. The founding myth of the EU is actually of the exploitation of women. You have the statue of Zeus with Europa riding, and it's based on deception, abduction and rape. People don't know that because they want to talk about money and other things. So basically I've been talking about the identity of the EU compared to the 1,000 years of heritage that we have in the UK that goes back to Alfred the Great, the ups and downs of that heritage, but we now have a free democracy where people have a choice, and my concern is that the EU is leading us to an empire. They're quite open. The Lib Dem conference, you know, Guy Verhofstadt saying we need an empire to counter the others, and that is basically totalitarian, which takes away the choice of the democratic elector.
Let's look at some of your statements about the EU then. There's a video of you speaking to Christian followers at the Revelation International Centre in 2018, where you described the EU as wicked, and you claim the EU was created in a temple, which isn't true. You talk about treaties, and
I said it was signed there. And by the way,
let me finish, Tim.
No,
let me finish.
No,
I'm going to finish the question. I am going to finish.
I know you are. I know.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep talking because you need to listen to the questions in a political interview. Thank you. You claim the EU was created in a temple that you equate with Satanism. You bring in allusions to thunderbolts, swastikas, and Nazi Germany. Your claims about where these EU treaties were signed is untrue. The Treaty of Rome, you claim, was signed in the Temple of Zeus. It wasn't. It was signed on the Constantine Hill. The Treaty of Lisbon, you claim, was signed in the same temple.
Could you allow me to speak?
Yes,
because you're now telling me what I'm saying, and I'm not allowed
what
to
I'd like to know is,
why do you make...
Why do you make...
No, it was actually the Temple of Jupiter.
I haven't asked the question yet, so hold on just one more moment. You make all of these claims. I want to know if you're going to bring these claims into the general election debate in South Thanet.
Well, people can ask me, and you're choosing to focus on this, but the EU was signed, the Treaty of Lisbon. The Treaty of
Lisbon was signed in Lisbon, the clue's in the title.
But it was to replace, which is typical EU, they moved the goalposts. So the EU constitution, which was rejected by France and the Netherlands, was signed in the remains of the Temple of Jupiter, which is Roman for Zeus. And I'm just making the point that do we want our future to be determined by Greek and Roman mythology, which led to dictatorship, or do we want to have some recognition, not only in Britain, by the way, but all the other countries of Europe, they have a strong Judeo-Christian heritage, which was written out of the EU constitution.
The preamble to the Constitution talks about religion generally so as to include as many religions as possible, and not exclusively your take on Christianity. You also blame the EU for changing the definition of marriage, causing equal marriage to spread across the whole world. You do realise that that was domestic legislation, don't you, not EU legislation? In Britain it was the Marriage Act 2013.
OK, so one of the issues that we're facing in this election is trust. The Conservatives and the Lib Dems went into a coalition. There was no mention whatsoever of the redefining of marriage, and yet in the election manifestos or in the coalition agreement. So I'm pointing out a consistent theme of actually not telling the electorate what they're doing.
EU.
Yes, because the EU is not democratic, and they do not actually...
So you're blaming the EU for domestic legislation?
Look, it was spread around. Well, you need to do more research to look at, yes, to see that they have a secular humanist. By the way, this isn't but it's Sunday, so why not talk about it? They have a secular humanist worldview, and I'm
Who's
saying
they?
that we have.
Who's they?
The EU constitution is secular humanist. It doesn't.
Okay.
They might bear reference to religion myths.
The EU is a peace project. The EU is there to support people to be and to have their own freedoms. That's the point of it being
Too many layers.
secular, so that we can include as many people as possible. And as a classical archaeologist, I find bringing in the classics of Greek and
They've put
Roman
it in.
history completely ludicrous.
Well,
in
it is,
discussion
except
about
that they've put
the
it in
future
front of the European
Union.
Council building and on the mosaic of the European Parliament.
Okay.
They are saying that is our foundation myth, and I reject
It's a big part
it.
of European history. It's not to do with the future
It's
of
part
the EU.
of the history in Southern
Okay.
Europe, but we have a
May I
thousand
just
years of
jump
other
in, because
history.
it is the Sunday politics, not
But
the
you chose
Sunday
to go down this
archaeology.
track.
Aside from the EU, you've also talked and written about the politics of sex and relationship education in schools, referring to shameful deeds done in secret, by which I
Yes.
presume you're referring to gay sex. Is it a sin?
Right, I'll tell you straight that on the front page of the Telegraph, they talk about Jews leaving this country because of Corbyn. Well, it's not just Corbyn.
Is gay
Faith
sex
schools
a
are
sin?
being faith schools are being suppressed on this issue.
Is gay sex
Look,
a sin?
We've got school gate protests because there's religious illiteracy among the media.
Is gay
no,
sex a sin?
I'm telling you straight. Okay, because that's the question you asked Tim Farron, and he was hounded and not able to talk about any other policy. I happen to have a classical, traditional Christian position
Tim Farron
on
was
sin.
hounded by the media. Tim Farron
And
never
thrown out by the Lib Dems.
Never voted once
And thrown out by the Lib Dems.
Hannah, if you could just pause for a moment. I think it's something that the people of South Thanet might like to know,
Yes.
is when you refer to shameful deeds done in secret, are you referring to gay sex, and is it a sin?
I think that one day everything hidden will be brought to light. And my life, your life, all of our lives, and things that are cooked up, let's say in the EU, will eventually come to light. But the problem is we only have a short chapter of 6 weeks where you should be scrutinising Boris Johnson's deal. Because at the end of the day, if you don't, you'll be failing as an impartial media.
Thank you so
and
much for your
continually
advice.
attacking
Can I
Christians
bring
is not
the
the
other
way
guests
to do it.
in? I'm not attacking you. I absolutely every right to your beliefs, completely.
I was
and
told
we
that I would
endorse
be
those.
asked about my background. You haven't asked me at all about my background.
Well, perhaps we could bring the
So
other
you're
guests
trying
in.
to caricature me.
OK, we'll leave the viewers to make a decision about whether you've been caricatured this morning. Hannah, you want to? You still want to go into politics?
I do.
You say that you've been trolled online for being a vegan.
Yeah.
Leaving aside questions of personal safety, obviously, is there a sense that being criticised, even being quite robustly criticised,
Yeah.
maybe even in ways that make you feel uncomfortable, that's part and parcel of engaging in public debate?
I think it is. Once it starts going towards, being told that you just shouldn't exist in the world, or being picked up on your religious views, or being picked up on your gender, I think there's a line there. We can all be robustly debated, but once it starts getting into the personal aspects of your life, and I think that's when it starts crossing
Yeah.
those
Tim,
lines.
you're
Thank you very
nodding
much.
there.
Well, no, I think that people should be free to live their lives. I made I've been involved in the Values Foundation, particular point about children. And you have to be very careful about steering children in directions that are irreversible. But I do think that generally we live in a free society. People should feel free to live and choose whatever they
Does
want.
that include people that choose to be homosexual, though? in your
Yes,
opinion?
it's their
People choose
choice.
to be
That's the essence of a modern democracy.
Okay, no,
is-
that was a bad choice. That was
Yeah.
a bad choice of words. People are homosexual, or people are transgender,
Yeah.
and you're saying that that's wrong still.
Well, I think that the transgender debate is still up for grabs, and they're still looking at the science. And
Okay.
it's quite wrong to put puberty blockers into kids that are irreversible.
Can we stay with politics in
Yeah.
the South East, particularly in a general election campaign?